Today's tutorial is going to be for the brand new pattern from the designer Just an E. This is called the Serendipty Striped Supertote. This may be one of the most expensive bags I've ever sewn, not because I purchased a lot of high-end materials, but simply because I won a contest. The Emporium was having a contest in her Facebook group, and she sent me all of these materials that I'm using today. So let's go through everything. Let's go through not only the materials I'm using, but also the pattern pieces. For my handles and crossbody strap, I'm using a 1.5 inch embossed webbing. I'm using this zipper tape for the main zipper and the interior zipper pocket. I'm going to have some crossbody connectors. I have a lot of hardware. Like I said, I won this box, so all this hardware except for my zipper pulls are from the Emporium. I'm going to be using a twist lock. I'll have some swivel hooks, some D-rings, adjustable bar. I have a woven label. This was also in the box. I have 2 end straps for the webbing, so this will just kind of be a covering, a nice decorative touch. It's going to have several pockets on the inside. Here is a pin pocket, 2 pieces. I'm just using cotton woven, and I'll have a piece for the trim for this pocket. We will have 2 pieces for a key minder on the inside of this bag. I'm going to have a zipper overlay and the zipper pocket lining pieces. This is going to be for the foam pocket inside. I have 2 pieces. It is a waterproof canvas, so no interfacing on anything yet. Even the cotton woven pieces, I haven't put any interfacing on. This is going to be the flap. I have 2 pieces. We have 4 side pieces. 2 of my side pieces will be this vinyl print. The other 2 will be the lining side pieces, and they will be this waterproof canvas. We have another pocket. This is going to be a slip pocket inside, and I do have a piece of trim for that slip pocket. I'm using that same vinyl that I'm using for my exterior for the trim. We have 2 base pieces, and one is an exterior, one is a lining. Nothing on these pieces yet, but I will. I'm pretty sure the pattern wants us to put a layer of Decaville Heavy, so I will do that. I'll let you know once I get that on. We have 2 interior pieces. These pieces are very big. You can see how big they look here. I do have these just cut out of a waterproof canvas. So even though this looks kind of flimsy, I'm not at all worried about it yet, because let's talk about that exterior. For the exterior, I have 8 pieces cut out. I'm using 2 different prints, and I'm using vinyl. You could do this with any type of material: cotton woven, cotton canvas, vinyl, or cork. This tote is going to be a great scrap buster. If you have pieces of coordinating prints that you want to put together, or even ones that don't match, you can. The way I'm going to do mine is I will probably have the floral print at the bottom, then a contrasting print, another floral, and then another contrast. So this is the way mine will look in the end. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sew these together. You can start at the top or you can start at the bottom. But whichever way you do it, just flip it right sides together and then sew. Make sure you have it oriented the way you want to go so you don't sew these upside down. After I sew these, I'm going to butterfly that seam and top stitch on both sides of it just for extra security, and honestly because I like the look. Now I will tell you, I am not adding the foam yet. The designer has you to sew these together and then add your foam and top stitch. So make sure you know that the pattern designer actually says sew these and then top stitch after you add the foam to them. I'll just fuse mine on with my heat press so mine will be securely attached. Now that we've talked about all these pieces, let's go ahead and start sewing the exteriors together. I've sewed those 2 pieces right sides together, and here is the seam. I used the full seam allowance, and I backstitched whenever I started and stopped. Now the pattern designer tells us that we open this up. We could use double-sided tape if we're using vinyl, or if we're using just a cotton woven, you could even just press it flat. I'm not going to do either, not because I disagree with what the designer's doing, just because I'm going to go ahead and top stitch mine now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and butterfly these open an 1/8 of an inch away. As a note, the designer does recommend you go ahead and sew all of these together for each side, then add your foam, then top stitch. This is how those first two pieces look. I'm going to go ahead and complete these steps with these other two for the front, and then I'll do the same thing for the back with the other 4 pieces. I have the front and the back completed. I really feel like the foam is very important. You could try Decaville Light or fleece or something like that, but for me, it's going to be foam. So I added the foam to both pieces. I did add foam to the side pieces and the base, Decaville Heavy, on my base piece as well. So everything is interfaced now for what I feel pretty comfortable with. So I do not think I'll have to add any other interfacing. I had originally thought that I would have this part be the top, but my flap is going to be this color, so I'm thinking this will be the top, so I can have that flap on the contrast piece here. That's what I'm going with for right now. So here's the front and the back. I'm going to set these 2 pieces aside. Oh, and I did keep all the foam out of my seam allowance just to kind of help me with my worry over bulk since I do sew on a domestic machine. Here's my 2 pieces for my flap. I'm choosing to use a twist lock, but if you want to use a magnetic snap, go ahead and add your magnetic snap first. I'll sew my 2 pieces right sides together for the flap, and then I'll add the twist lock after. I take these 2 pieces, I just place them right sides together, and I'm going to sew down the sides, the bottom, and back up the other side, leaving my top open. Now I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to use my pinking shears, and I'm going to trim up all around here to make this lay a little bit better. I'm also going to take the time while I'm off camera to go ahead and turn this out. I have turned my flap right sides out. I have these rubber or silicone clips attached to the flap to kind of help compress those seams. I'm going to top stitch it now, but I always add the clips first just to give it a few minutes just to help compress everything. I have the female portion of the twist lock. This is what will go on the flap. After I top stitch it, I will use the pattern measurements to measure up from this finished edge. The pattern tells you how far up to measure, and of course you're going to have it centered in the middle. Twist locks are a little tricky to do, I think personally. What I'll do is I'll cut out the opening. The way I cut out the opening is with my hole punch. So I'll probably have 2 or 3. For the opening, I'll use my scissors to trim the rest of it. There are dies that you can buy if you have a rivet press that you can just press out the opening and have it be a perfect opening. I don't have that option. And also I'll have to make sure I have my hole punch to punch out the 2 openings for the screws. I will unscrew this, and then the finished edge will be on what I want to be my exterior of the flap, and it'll go through, and this will be the part you'll see on the lining. The twist lock will take me quite a while to get it perfectly on there, so I won't do those steps on camera. If you have any questions about adding a twist lock though, just let me know. First thing I'll do though is I'll go ahead and top stitch around, and I'm going to even baste this top part closed because I don't need it open anymore. So I'm going to do all of those stitches just 1/8 of an inch away. So I have my twist lock installed. So this is the front of the flap. There is the twist lock. Here is the back. The pattern tells us to decide which of these pieces we've made for the exterior will be the front and will be the back. This will be my back piece. So grab out that back piece, and you're going to center your flap onto that back piece, and you're going to have it right sides down. So for me, the right side of the twist lock. If your flap has a magnetic snap, you'd be looking at your magnetic snap. If you're using the twist lock, you're looking at the wrong side. The pattern also tells us to leave a certain amount of the flap hanging over for security on this back piece. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew this in place with that seam allowance given in the pattern. Back stitching while I start and stop. If you're uncomfortable or concerned, you could do another row of stitching to make sure that this is really secured in there nicely. I'm going to go ahead and set this part aside, and now we're going to work on some of our pocket pieces. Let's start with that phone pocket piece. It is 2 pieces of whatever material. I'm using a waterproof canvas for mine. If you're using a cotton woven or something, you would probably want to interface that. What you're going to do is you're going to sew all around this piece, but you're going to leave an opening a couple inches big, wide enough for you to turn it through. You can leave the opening pretty much wherever you want. You will be closing it either when you're top stitching or when you're sewing this onto the lining piece. I'm just going to choose to leave that opening there on the side, and I'm going to stitch all the way around, back stitching when I start and stop. I'm going to trim off a little bit of this bulk around the corners. If you want, you can trim off a little bit of the seam allowance, no more than half, just to help reduce that. So after I trim off all my corners, I will turn this right sides out through that opening in the side on mine, so wherever you left yours. I'll also take the time to press it flat. Yes, this is a waterproof canvas, but I can still use my iron. As long as I'm careful, I can do that without causing any problems. I'll come back and show you what this looks like, and I will then top stitch along the top edge of it. Before I go and do that though, I'm going to bring out this zipper pocket piece. I have 2 lining pieces, a zipper, and I have a zipper overlay. I'm going to set my overlay to the side and just work on the zipper and the lining pieces. Have one of your lining pieces right sides up. Place that zipper on top of it right sides up. You're matching up that long edge, and then you're just going to sew these together with the seam allowance given in the pattern. After I have that sewn together, I like to go ahead and separate these 2 pieces so that I'm looking at the right side of the zipper but the wrong side of my lining, and then all I do is tack that zipper down. Just helps it whenever I'm adding it to the zipper overlay later to get a smoother stitch, I feel like. So I just basted that down 1/8 of an inch away. Here's the wrong side of my lining, right side of my zipper. Flip it over, correct side of the lining, wrong side of the zipper. If you get confused at any of this point, just imagine opening your zipper and seeing the correct side of your lining. I'm going to do those same steps with this other zipper pocket lining piece. I'll do that part off camera, and then after I finish adding this piece, I'll also add my zipper pull onto this piece, and then we'll set this aside until we're ready to use it later in the pattern. Here is that slip pocket piece for the phone turned right sides out. Now I just need to top stitch. I'm going to choose to top stitch where the opening is. Since all of these sides are the same measurement, it's not a big deal where I top stitch, so I'll just go ahead and do that to close this piece. And whenever I'm done, I'll set this aside until I need to attach it to the lining. Now I'm going to construct the slip pocket. This is the same technique you'll use to construct the pin pocket. Just make sure you follow the pattern for how you place things, but it is the same steps. So what you have is 2 pieces for your slip pocket and then your trim. I really like how this comes together. I've never used this technique before, and I think it's a really cool way to do it. Have your slip pocket piece right sides up. Take your trim piece, place it right sides down so they are right sides together. You can add some clips here along the top, and it should fit perfectly. So you're adding the long side of the slip pocket to the long side of the trim. So with the seam allowance given in the pattern, once you have that sewn, then what you're going to do is you're going to push that seam allowance back towards your slip pocket. I'm going to kind of press it flat and then come to the front and make sure it's rolling flat, and then I'm going to top stitch here. This is how that first side looks. Go ahead and take your other slip pocket piece and lay it right sides down on top. So everything again is right sides together. Go ahead and sew this with that same seam allowance. Do the same thing with this seam for top stitching. This is how it looks. Go ahead and fold this so it's right sides together. I'll start here at the top and fold that seam so that it matches up. Come over to the other side, do the same thing, match up those seams. And so now what I want to do is I want to sew it down both the sides and across the bottom. I'm going to leave an opening in the bottom so that I can turn it right sides out. Start all the way at the top. Now what I want to do is I want to trim some of the seam allowance. Definitely want to get rid of it in the corners. I don't care so much about everywhere else, but the corners and up here at the top, that corner as well. Want to kind of angle in a little bit on that one. The reason why I angle is just for a chance to reduce a little bit more bulk. Don't cut any around your opening because we want to use that to help tuck in at the end. Let's go ahead and turn this out. Now I will tell you it's going to take a little bit of time because you're going to have to poke out this corner really nicely, so don't rush this step. Take your thumb and try to push out that corner first to save yourself a little bit of time poking out. I save this other corner for last so I can use my thumb to poke it out as well. I'll still have to come back with a pokey tool to get it perfect, but that just helps me a little. I'm going to start clipping around here on this end where the seam is. I'm going to use these bigger clips to kind of help compress that together. And you can see this wants to go in, kind of push everything out. Tuck in that bottom so that you can close that opening nicely. So this is how it looks right now. If you wanted, you could take it over the iron and kind of press everything flat. But now what we need to do is top stitch across this top trim, the vinyl part. As with all top stitching, I'm just going to do 1/8 of an inch away. But if you prefer to do a different stitch here, you could. It wouldn't matter so much at this step. I love the way this slip pocket looks. Look how neat, just gorgeous slip pocket. I'm going to use my clips and keep them on there for a while and compress the seams just so everything lays flat. The next thing I'll do is add this to the lining, but I'm going to set this part aside, get all of my pockets completed. So go ahead and complete your pin pocket the same way. We have all of the pockets constructed. Now it's time to just put them all together on the lining. So the first thing I'm going to work on is the zipper pocket. We have this zipper pocket overlay piece. It's given to us as a measurement, and then the pattern gives us the measurements as to where to cut out this box. Then the pattern gives us the measurement to how far down we're going to place this overlay piece onto our lining. Our lining is going to be right sides up. Our overlay is going to be right sides up. We're going to center the overlay onto this lining piece. The pattern tells you could use some double-sided tape here if you wanted to, but since I don't use double-sided tape, I'm going to use a little bit of glue just to kind of help make sure that it doesn't shift around while I'm sewing it. Now that I have this at the proper placement, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch all the way around the perimeter of this box, the outside of my zipper overlay. After I have that stitched on, I'm going to trim all this extra in from the back. I'm actually going to snip just here in the middle, but I'm going to make for sure that I go to the back and get as close as I can to the stitches, maybe 1/4 of an inch away from where my stitches are. Then we will insert the zipper. I've sewed around the box. I cut out that extra lining. You can see from the back I left about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little more, all the way around. Now I'm going to pull out that lining piece with the zipper. I want my zipper to close to the left, so I'm going to open this up and have it laying flat so my zipper is right sides up. I'm going to make sure I have an even amount of this lining on both sides and just center it on there. Now if you don't feel comfortable doing it my way, you could use double-sided tape to tape the zipper in place. What I'm going to do is just kind of fold this down and clip it in place. My goal is to keep the teeth of the zipper in the middle of this box the entire time. While sewing this, I realized I forgot that woven label. So I'm going to pick a few stitches here, slip that woven label in, and then sew it on. I picked a few stitches out, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick the raw edges of this tag in the overlay, and I'm going to sew over them. So now that I have the zipper attached, what I'm going to do is come to the back, pull my lining down, make sure it matches on the sides. I'm clipping the sides in place. I'm going to go ahead and trim up this overhang here at the bottom. Now that I have that bottom trimmed off, we're going to sew down both sides. We're going to leave this bottom piece open. That's how we're going to turn our bag. To sew this though, I'm going to flip it back to the right side of the lining. And I'm going to pull it back so I can sew down both of these sides. I try to sew as close as I can to this side edge. You can trim up the lining and zipper tape extra if you have any hanging over, or you can just leave it as is. I'm going to trim up mine and then we'll go on to adding the next pocket. On that same interior piece, you're going to make sure that your pocket, the zipper pocket lining piece, is up out of the way, and you're going to attach your slip pocket. The pattern tells you how far down from the overlay you measure, but it's going to be centered on here. You are going to sew this slip pocket piece in place on the sides and the bottom. Make sure you backstitch when you start and stop. The pattern also tells you that you can add rivets to the side for extra security, but I'm going to skip that step today. We are going to take this larger slip pocket piece and we're going to attach it to the other interior piece, the second interior piece, the same way we attach this one. Use the pattern measurements as to where you place this slip pocket on the other interior piece and sew it the same way, sides and bottom, as you did the foam pocket. For the key minder, I'm doing mine just slightly different. So for this, I do not want to add a lot of bulk to the top of my bag because I'm using vinyl, I'm sewing on a domestic, I'm already just a slight bit nervous. So what I did was I took the pattern measurements. I used the same measurements. I did decide to use a cotton woven. The pattern has you draw a line down the middle and fold both raw edges to that middle piece. And then you just top stitch down both long edges, then slip this on and fold it in half. And it would be like this. But since I'm having raw edges showing here, so there's no risk of mine fraying at any point or unraveling, what I'm going to do is do the same steps. Everything's exactly the same at this point, but I'm going to fold it first, and now I'm going to top stitch all around here so it's connected, and so I don't have to worry about any fraying. If you are using a material that is a non-fray, like say you want to use a waterproof canvas for this step, or if you wanted to use webbing, you could do it that way. But the way I'm doing mine, since I don't want to add any extra bulk, is I'm actually going to top stitch everything all together. So I just have that extra security there. Here's how my key minder looks. The same size and everything, just like I said, I put my sides together to top stitch. Now that you have the slip pocket sewn in place, go ahead and pull out that key. The pattern says to place it to the left of the slip pocket and have it overhanging a bit. I'm going to go ahead and baste that into place. And the last interior pocket we have is this small pin pocket, and it's going to go on your interior side piece. So pull out that piece, use the pattern measurements to find out where to place it. It will be centered on the sides, but there's a specific measurement as to how far down it goes. You're going to sew this slip pocket just like you did the other ones, down one side, across the bottom, and back up the other side. Now let's talk about that crossbody connector that we are going to use to attach a D-ring to the exterior of the bag. Cut your piece according to the pattern measurements. You will cut 2 of these. On the back, you're going to draw a line down the middle. You will take each raw edge and fold it to that line on the middle. This is how it will look from the exterior. both of the raw edges will be folded down to meet that middle line. What you're going to do now is you are just going to top stitch down both sides. I already did that on my other piece, so I want to show you what it looks like. I top stitched down both sides, but after I did that, I slipped on my D-ring and then I folded my edges to meet in the back. The pattern tells you about how far to fold the top part. What I did on this one was I added glue because I need to be able to attach this to the side piece. I don't want it being able to flop open like that because that would have me risking it being sewn and part of it peeking through. I don't want to have it sewn on crooked. So either add double-sided tape or glue to this piece so it is secure like this. So when we add it to the side piece, we don't have any risk there. What we're going to do is we're going to sew this onto that side piece, but the designer tells us to also add some rivets for extra security, and I'm definitely going to do that too. So I'm going to go off camera and mark where this will go on my side piece, and then we'll get that prepped and I'll show you how it looks and we'll sew it together. So I used the pattern measurements for the exact placement for this D-ring connector. I used a little bit of glue to kind of secure it in place. We just want something to make sure that when we're sewing it's not completely shifting. I don't want it to look crooked or anything at the end. Now what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to sew completely around this connector. I know for a fact that even if I use a hump jumper, my hardware is a little big and it's going to create some problems. What I'm going to do on my domestic machine is I'm just going to sew across the top first. I'll start here, back stitch once, come over here, back stitch again. I'll break those stitches and then I'll sew up from the bottom on both sides, and I'll also sew across. So I'll have to do a lot more stitches, but I just know this is best if I want to have a really nice looking bag. Go ahead and do it whatever way is best for you. This is just the way that I know I can get the best looking bag for me. Here is how that D-ring connector looks. I'm going to go off camera, trim up my threads, and then I'm also going to add 2 rivets on here. It'll add a nice touch, of course, for decoration, but it also is going to add a lot of stability and structure that I really want. I will add the other connector to the other side and add rivets to both and have this part done on this side piece. For this next step, pull out your exterior front piece. As a side note, the pattern tells us that we need to install the other side of our twist lock or magnetic snap, whichever you are using. The pattern tells you how far down from the top you're going to install that, so make sure you have that added to the front exterior before we go on. Now pull out that base piece or the bottom piece and go ahead and place it right sides together with the bottom of that front exterior. The pattern gives you a mark to place on each side of this base on the top and the bottom. Place those 4 marks, and those will be the marks where you start and stop sewing this base piece to the front, and then on the next step in the back. Now the pattern does not have its top stitch at this step, so we are just going to fold it down and we are going to do the same thing to this other side with our back piece. I'm going to do the back piece off camera, but then I will come back and show you how we're going to add the sides, but pretty much it'll be the same way we are attaching this base piece. So here is the front of my exterior, here's the back, and here is that base piece. Take one of your side pieces and at the bottom make those marks from the pattern measurements. You are going to place this bottom piece against the side here of your base, and you're going to sew in between those marks. You should have the gap still on this base piece to the exterior, so go ahead and place it. You can clip it from one side to the other of your base, but basically you're going to still have that gap there. That's going to allow you, whenever you pull up the sides, to get a really nice 90-degree angle on this bottom exterior. What you want to do on this piece is you want to push that exterior front and back out of the way so that you can make sure you clip this side piece onto the base evenly. It's kind of big and bulky at this point. This is a very nice size tote, so carefully slide it under your needle. Make sure you're sewing with that full seam allowance just in between those two marks you made. Make sure you backstitch when you start and stop sewing in between those two marks. My back's getting a little big, so it's making it a little cumbersome to show how I'm sewing it with the camera right here above it because it kind of gets in the way. So I'm going to do the same steps to sew this other side piece on this other side, but let me go ahead and show you how you'll do the front and the back to this side piece. But do you see how whenever I fold this up, everything fits perfectly? What I'll do is I will go ahead and clip all along this piece until it gets all the way to the top. You can see here on this side where my stitches end. It's the same spot where I made that mark. This is where we're going to start sewing. So you'll put your needle down here, back stitch here, but then you'll sew all the way down this. It'll be going towards the top of the bag, and so you will sew all the way. You don't need to leave any space at the top like we're doing here at the bottom. Now that I have this side sewn, I will do the same thing for this side and then repeat all those steps for the other side. We will do the interior and the exterior the same way. To make the adjustable crossbody strap, I went ahead and cut out the webbing according to the pattern measurements, and I slid on an adjustable bar. You do not have to slide on the adjustable bar first. I just went ahead and did it for ease. I have the two raw edges here. I use my lighter to kind of melt them a little bit. And then the strap connectors. So the pattern tells you to draw a line down the middle and then to fold the raw edges to that middle. I used glue on mine just to help secure it a little bit. But now what I'll do is I'll take one of these pieces, fold that in half again, and then slip it on the edge. You can use glue or double-sided tape here as well if you wanted to before you take it over to the sewing machine and sew across. So now that I have the folded piece on each of these, that connector, what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this strap down. And then I'll take this piece and just fold it back here. Slide that adjustable bar out of the way, and now you're just going to tack this down. You can sew a box. You could even do a rivet if you wanted. So now what I'll do is I'm going to add a swivel hook to this piece. Make sure you don't get your strap twisted. Come up, go over again, check one more time to make sure nothing's twisted. Take the other swivel hook, slip it on, and then I'm going to fold it down, and I want to do that same thing where I don't stitch on that vinyl, that I stitch right before it. So here is my crossbody strap. I'm going to go off camera, trim up all my threads, and then it's ready to attach to my bag. I have the exterior of my bag turned right sides out. Now what I did was I took the pattern measurements. You measure from this side seam over and you make a mark, and then you put your webbing inside that mark. The pattern tells you to have an overhang on your strap. She does recommend webbing 1.5 inch. I'm fortunate that I got this in a very sturdy quality webbing, so I feel very secure with the webbing I'm using, but just be cautious with what you're using. This is a big bag, especially if you plan on using it to its full potential with a lot of heavy items. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to baste across both of these straps to secure them in place. After I do that, I will do the same thing with my other strap on the back side of this bag. After that, I will put the interior right sides together with this, and then we'll sew around the top, turn it out, and be done with this bag. I have both of the handles attached to this bag on the exterior. I have the interior turned wrong sides out, and so we're looking at the wrong side of my interior. I have the exterior and interior clipped right sides together. What I need to do now is I need to sew all around the perimeter of this bag. I'm not going to do this on camera. This bag is kind of big, and so for the angle that would be able to allow you to see things clearly would be very limited. So we know how to sew around the perimeter of the bag. We do it all the time. You're going to use the full seam allowance and go all the way around this bag. A couple of things I did differently just to help myself out is that I have the exterior on the inside and the lining on the outside. I'm pretty sure the pattern has that different, that the exterior is wrong sides out and the interior is right sides out. The reason why I'm doing this because I'm actually going to birth half the bag through an opening I left in the bottom of the lining. My hands give me a lot of trouble these days. As we get older, this happens. So what I'm going to try to do is pull this exterior out from this bottom, and then I will close up the opening in the bottom of the lining through this zipper pocket here. I feel like that's going to give me the best look and be the easiest on my hands. So I'm going to do everything off camera, but when I come back, I will show you the finished bag and talk about anything that came up at any point. But what I'm going to do now is sew everything up, and then everything is done with this bag. My Serendipty Striped Supertote by Just an E Patterns is complete. Now on this bag, I used almost all materials from Emporium Threads. I sewed all of this on my domestic machine. I'm going to show you the inside. It is a little bit baggy, so let me just set my strap aside and let's look at the exterior first. Love those connectors. I know this is a really odd angle, but it's just such a big bag. Everything looks great on it. Love the shape. The designer is 100% right on the foam. Don't skip the foam on this. It's just one of those bags that needs it. This is a huge bag. Open up my twist lock so you can see the inside. We have this slip pocket and the key minder on this side. Flip it around. We have a zipper pocket, slip pocket, and then we have another pin pocket there on the side. Plenty of pockets, plenty of storage. This is a great travel bag. Huge, huge bag. I knew my lining was going to be slightly baggy because whenever I started putting it together, I could tell that the exterior was a little bit smaller. So that was something that I should have checked ahead of time. So that was on me to check that, and that was a problem on me, not the pattern. But I do recommend checking this exterior once you piece it together with your lining piece, just to make for sure that everything is fitting good and looks good. Check it against your side pieces. My exterior was just a little too short. Even though I had that, this tote is still gorgeous. This is a gorgeous bag. Will I make it again? 100%. I will make this again. I feel like this is one I will make a lot of. I probably won't use vinyl on the exterior on waterproof canvas inside. It was hard for my hands to turn. My domestic machine did not like the top stitching, not like it was horribly bad, but just where the bag was so big and it was a little thick at the top, it's just hard to maneuver under the machine. If you had a cylinder arm, if you had an industrial, it would make it a lot easier. Not saying that this bag isn't domestic friendly, just the material choices I made at the end gave me a little bit of grief. All in all, highly, highly recommend this pattern. This is going to be a pattern that I see myself using, see myself making. I have a lot of scraps that I need to use up. I could use a different scrap for each layer and just have a really fun, pretty, colorful bag, and I really feel like I want to do that. So this is the Serendipty Striped Supertote from Just an E. All of my materials are from Emporium Threads. I'm going to have a link to both in my description. And thank you so much for taking this journey with me on this bag. It has been so much fun, and I've really loved sewing it up. Thank you so much, and have an amazing day.